I'm joined in studio by Gabriel McSharry, medical herbalist and nutritionist. Good morning, Gabriel.
Morning, Margaret.
And thanks for coming in to us this morning. Now, calcium. You wanted to talk this morning a little bit about calcium.
Just a recent research article published in the British Medical Journal, which looks at all other research that's been published over the years on calcium. And calcium is something that's very important for health. It's contained in numerous foods, and we know this, and we know it's a constituent of bone, and it's good for bones. However, it's been kind of blanket recommended as a supplement form to prevent osteoporosis, which is quite common in Ireland. And this, I was never a fan of supplemental calcium, really. And in supplements in general, the best place to get it is from food or natural sources. But in general, supplements in general are relatively safe. However, calcium for a good 4 or 5 years now, I've been iffy about because there was a number of clinical trials published to show that it could be harmful. So anyway, this latest study published looked at everything. So it was a meta-analysis to look at all the research, and the analysis found that there's a 30% increased risk of myocardial infarction in those who take elemental calcium supplementation. So myocardial infarction is heart attack, really, I suppose, the medical term for a heart attack. So that was pretty shocking, really, that there's the found that there's a 30% increased risk. So what can we glean from this? I guess the important thing to note is that it's possibly not a good recommendation to, we'll say, for a certain cohort like postmenopausal women to just blanket take calcium supplements to prevent osteoporosis. It's not a good practice. If you're to take supplemental calcium, you have to be make sure that you're taking all the minerals that contain that bone contains. So calcium is only one of many minerals. Bone is comprised of at least a dozen minerals, and the exclusive focus on calcium supplementation, some experts believe might even worsen bone density. So it's important to get them all, and generally where calcium is in nature, all the other minerals will be as well. So again, it's one of these things that the further we move away from natural traditional diets and stuff, and more into artificial foods, taking, I guess, supplementation or pills, we get things wrong quite a lot.
Yeah, but we're all aware how important, though, that calcium is, and especially for people who possibly have illness or have brittle bones or a problem with their bones. You're part of their, I suppose, diet and part of their treatment would be to take calcium.
Definitely, and what this highlights is that it's important not to just take calcium on its own, isolated. It's important to take a supplemental form along with the other nutrients. So, for years now we've known that vitamin D, if one is deficient in vitamin D or insufficient, the body is unable to metabolize calcium. So you're unable to build up bone with calcium if you're vitamin D deficient. Now, vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency in Ireland is massive, and in the Northern Hemisphere in general.
But is that because lack of sun as well? Vitamin D from sun?
Lack of sun, definitely for Ireland and the same latitude, say in Canada and the States, we can only produce it 6 months of the year. But also, we're afraid of the sun now. We've been told to avoid it. And the dietary sources of vitamin D, the only place it is naturally is in fat and blood. And again, we're told to avoid fat for 30 years and so on. And we don't eat as much blood products as we did traditionally. So, because of that, there is, because of expert advice, really, that we have insufficient vitamin D levels, and deficiency could possibly be very, very, very high. And with that, if you're taking supplemental calcium and you're vitamin D deficient, the body can't utilize it and can't put it into the bone, so it'll have to put it elsewhere, and possibly it could put it into a hypothesis put forward years ago was it could put it into the arteries and calcification of the arteries. So, atherosclerosis or plaque in the arteries in heart disease, everyone thinks it's cholesterol there, but 90% of plaque is made up of calcium. and calcium is strong. It's a kind of a cement, so it could possibly affect the musculature of the heart. It could end up in the kidneys as renal calculi or kidney stones. It could end up in the bones or the joints, like throwing sand into the gearbox of a car. It's so really we don't know, but the key is to and again I emphasize, calcium from whole foods has shown in other trials to extend your lifespan and to be very, very healthy. But
so what you're saying is really that people should try and eat the natural foods which contain calcium rather than just take constant supplements for it, because obviously there'd be a lot of people listening this morning who are taking calcium supplement.
Definitely. Well, what I would say is if you're relatively healthy and you're just taking it as a preventative, say for osteoporosis, then that's not good practice. I think increase your dietary sources. If you do have osteoporosis, then supplementation is prudent and warranted, only along with vitamin D and all the other minerals in bones, which there's many. So I guess some of the sources of all the other minerals, such as silica, magnesium, boron, strontium. One of my favourites to cover these is, again, a very thing that was high in traditional diets is unrefined sea salt. As 82 minerals and trace elements, everyone should be taking it, in my opinion. It's unrefined sea salt isn't the same as table salt, which is a poor product. So in judicious amounts, unrefined sea salt is important, and it contains all these minerals and trace elements, and ones that are very hard, if not impossible, to get everywhere else in the diet. So that's just one recommendation. Okay. Other, natural sources of calcium is good quality milk, raw milk I prefer. Leafy green vegetables, without doubt, a great source. Wheatgrass, other vegetables, hard water, it's always overlooked, but hard water is relatively good for the body, and there's elemental calcium there along with other minerals. The silica and magnesium, you're looking at, say, cucumbers, tomatoes, certain herbs that are high in silica, horsetail, nettles, alfalfa, and cacao, or as we say in the west of Ireland, cocoa, that you get in dark chocolate or the cocoa drink. It's actually high in certain minerals as well. Vitamin D, I've talked about before. Obviously, safe sun exposure. That's get it as much as you can, but never burn. But
do it safely, exactly.
And obviously, good fish oils and stuff. But vitamin K too. You see, the problem is fat-soluble vitamins are vital to the utilization of calcium, and that's vitamin D, but also K, E, and where you get K is again the green leafy vegetables, fermented foods like yogurts and cheeses. And then there's a few general ones. Weight bearing exercise, very important for bones. Unless you use, I guess, the body, use it or lose it, but you don't need to go mad on weights, but if you carry your shopping home instead of maybe using a trolley or whatever, simple things throughout the day. As we use our musculature, it sends signals to the bones to build up bones. So it's important not to be a couch potato for healthier bones.
Okay. This listener wants to know, what's the best way to control the eating of sweet food? So I presume they have a sweet tooth and they want to try and...
Yeah, and sweet cravings, very, very common. It's pretty detailed, and really what brings on sweet cravings... well, here's one way, and probably the most common, so it's the best to highlight. If you're a person who, for instance, might really lose their energy within an hour after lunch, say, and I've talked to people at the clinic who nearly fall asleep on their computer after lunch, a half hour after having lunch, their energy, they're wrecked, and I call it a kind of an afternoon slump. But what's going on here now, as well as this, if you don't get this slump in energy, you might get this feeling of, I always need something sweet after a meal, just a little bit of something sweet.
I think
just
we're all kind of like that sometimes.
Pick me up if I feel lazy, right? So let's look into the body. What's going on here? What's going on is generally your meal that you just had is relatively low in fats and proteins, and probably high in carbohydrates, without doubt. And what happens is blood sugar spikes up, insulin spikes up, and then blood sugar goes way down because insulin goes up, and instead of going back to normal levels, there's this relative drop that kind of shoots it down below baseline. And if your blood sugar goes low, you'll feel tired. Cognitive function isn't great, concentration very poor, but the brain says, right, energy has gone really low here, blood sugar has gone really low, we're going to pass out here, so we need energy quick. So the quickest form of energy is sugar, and it's kind of a signal to the body, get some energy quicker, you'll pass out. And the quickest way is a little bit of chocolate or something, a soda drink or something very sweet, and hence that cycle of needing something sweet just to lift the energy up again, and that spikes blood glucose again, and it kind of sets off this kind of roller coaster for the day, But this is classical hypoglycemic slumps. So this can be the basis a lot for sweet cravings in general, and the long-term treatment, which takes a bit of time, but in the end of the day, you lose your sweet cravings and you're quite content and satisfied, and you're not hungry between meals and so on and so on. Basically, you need to increase your fat consumption and protein consumption relative to your carbohydrates. So because of this whole low fat thing that's been drilled into us for 30 years, it's very misguided, and I talk about quite regularly here. We tend towards more grain-based foods as the majority of your plate, so a lot of rice or a lot of spuds or a lot of chips, and then maybe a small bit of meat and relatively low fat, you might get a tiny little bit of meat fat on the meat, or a little bit of cheese or something, but it's always kind of on the lower side of everything. So really you need to change that, and you need to, if you have a salad, say, you need to drench it in olive oil. If you have a bit of meat, eat a little bit of the fat, or put a bit of butter on it, melt it into your vegetables with a bit of butter and stuff like that. And really what satiates the body, what turns off hunger, is fats and proteins. Carbohydrates don't. So your grains and your sugars and your starchy vegetables like potatoes, carrots and stuff like that. So if your majority, relatively the majority of your meal is carbohydrates, it's going to play around with your blood sugar levels, and obviously if you have a Coke or one of these sugary drinks at your dinner, that's going to definitely spin out your blood sugar levels as well. So it's really over time, reducing carbohydrates, increasing healthy fats and proteins, and over time hunger will stabilize. You'll lose the sugar cravings, and your diet will be better.
So just change your eating habits.
Definitely,
really,
but it takes a bit of time, and it takes a bit of education on what's healthy fats, what's not, and so on.
Okay. Do grapes get rid of cholesterol from blood? Have you ever heard that?
I'd say probably, there's constituents in fruits and vegetables that bind cholesterol in the gut. Plant phytosterols, they're called. They're a fatty component, and they have shown in trials to have a temporary reduction in blood cholesterol. Grapes in moderation are healthy in my opinion, and eat the skins, and if you want, eat the seeds, but don't go overboard on grapes. Grapes are very different to berries. I tell everyone to take berries. Berries are great.
Berries,
and they say it's grapes, berries, because grapes are very, very sweet, so be careful with them. But they're a healthy food. There's no problem with them.
Okay, and just finally, artificial sweeteners. Do you agree or disagree with artificial sweeteners?
I disagree with them. Yeah, they're especially there's a kind of a scale. There's one called sodium.
We're not going into products as such
Right. There's one that's been around 100 years.
Okay.
It's an artificial sweetener. And it's better than the one that's been around for about 30 years. That's, in my opinion, a poison.
But would you say if you want a sweetener, would you be better off using sugar, just ordinary sugar? Or?
You'd use sugar better than aspartame, which is an artificial sweetener for definite. It's better, but in general, if you were to say natural sweet things that could sweeten a bit of yogurt or something, is a good quality raw honey. Stevia is a herb. It's a sweet herb, and it's really, really good as a sugar replacement. Other than that, nothing else really,
Nothing else. Okay, Gabriel McSharry, medical herbalist, nutritionist. Thanks a million for joining us, and of course you'll be back with us in about 2 weeks. Thanks.